phone, any phone. But seriously, I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and today we're going to do a smackdown of 4 top Android phones on AT&T. We have the Xperia Ion here, we have Motorola Atrix HD, we have the HTC One X, and the Samsung Galaxy S3. Can't decide which one to pick? We're going to help you now. So here we've got a lineup of the arguably the top Android phones on AT&T. They're the newest, they all have really nice features, a lot in common. So which do you pick? First off, let's talk about, well, the size, the looks, and design. As you can see, these guys are all about the same size. They're also about the same thickness. Galaxy S3 here, Sony Xperia Ion here, Motorola Atrix HD here, and the HTC One X here. 4.8-inch display, 4.5-inch display, 4.5-inch display, 4.7-inch display. Despite the difference in display sizes, you can see you're looking at about approximately the same size device. So I wouldn't call the center two, the $99 pair, more portable just because they have a 4.5-inch display. All 4 of these phones have 720p displays. That means 1280 by 720 pixels. That's a lot of resolution, great pixel density, and all very nice displays. HTC One X uses a Super LCD2 display. Very good lateral viewing angles on it. Really nice looking display. One of the nicer ones on the market. Slightly curved glass, and it just kind of looks like the picture is painted on. So, one of my favorite displays here. The Motorola Atrix HD uses what they call their Color Boost LCD, and it looks IPS-like in the way it delivers colors, and it also has very good viewing angles. Can't fault that one. Now, this one here, the Sony has their mobile Bravia engine. They use all of their TV branding here in their display technology, and it has the clear black kind of thing going on. Really, really different looking from the other two in person. It just has a luminosity and a way that the colors glow, yet it's very sharp. That's very attractive. And while the One X and the Motorola are pretty clear and sharp to look at, and you know, you definitely say wow with either of these, there's something extra about that Bravia display that really is nice. You just want to keep looking at it. You look at photos, and the photos look better on the phone display than they're going to look just about anywhere else. Neat technology there. And lastly, we have the also 720p display on the Samsung Galaxy S3. That's a Super AMOLED HD display, not Super AMOLED Plus, which means it still has that pen-tile matrix, and you know how some folks rag on that because it has fewer subpixels, and indeed it does look a little less sharp. Of course, it has those hyper vivid colors. The color gamut of that display is way wider than what the human eye can even see, which is why colors look very bold, very saturated, or perhaps even oversaturated. For you folks who are photographers or color purists, you might find it a bit too much, but I know a lot of people actually really do like it a lot. The whites are not as white on the Super AMOLED HD display. A little bit of a blue color cast on things, just the way the technology is. Other than that, it lacks a little bit in outdoor viewing compared to the others as well. But for indoor viewing, it certainly is a pleasing, colorful display, and if you're sold on the Samsung experience, you've had a couple of Samsung smartphones before, you'll probably like it. My personal pick, though, the Xperia Ion for the display. But you can't go wrong with any of them, and boy, the HTC One X particularly has a very lovely display, too. Now the two guys in the middle are $99 with contract versus $199 for the outer two, so there has to be a difference, right? I mean, that's half the price. Well, keep in mind that there's also a subsidy going on here. AT&T is looking to promote some phones. If you're buying these without contract, then you're looking at $549 for the more expensive phones versus $449, so not as much of a difference there. But anyway, on contract, obviously you're going to spend half as much for the Atrix HD or the Sony Xperia Ion, and well, why is that? And honestly, with the Atrix HD, and you should check out our video review of that too, and our written review, it's hard to fault it in any way. It has all the same great specs as the HTC One X and the Galaxy S3. It has the same Qualcomm Snapdragon S4, that's the latest generation dual-core 1.5 gigahertz CPU. Benchmark's about the same, around 4,700 or so on Quadrant versus closer to 5,000 on these two, but that probably has something to do with software optimization. Honestly, us humans can't make these phones do anything slowly. They're very fast phones, so I wouldn't say you can really feel the difference between a 4,700 and a 5,000 on Quadrant. They do the same on GL Benchmark graphics test, which is the same mid-50s. Has the same 720p display, a nice thin design, a high-quality display, an 8-megapixel camera. Great voice quality, has LTE. One thing it doesn't have that the other phones have is NFC. Right now, because there's really not a whole lot you can do with NFC in terms of mobile payments, that's not real hardship for anybody, and I'm not sure. I would say probably that's not why AT&T is pricing that low. They're just doing it to try to get some customers. So certainly you're getting a lot of phone for the buck here. With the Xperia Ion, What you're paying for there, for your modest $99 if you're getting this contract, is that Bravia display, a 12 megapixel camera, really nice, beautiful, beautiful design, build quality, metal back. It's the only one here with a metal back. But what's the drawback here? It's running on the Qualcomm Snapdragon S3, last generation CPU. That was hot last fall, not as hot now. Again, it's still pretty fast. I mean, it's going to run games really well, do web browsing, and I don't use it and say, oh my god, what a pig this thing is. But there's at least a reason why that would be $99. And also, it's the only one still running Gingerbread, Android OS 2.3. Now, it will get Ice Cream Sandwich. Sony has said that, and AT&T has said that, so we don't know when, though. The others are all running Android 4.0 Ice Cream Sandwich, which is pretty much the latest and greatest available on phones right now. Yes, Jelly Bean Android 4.1 is out on the Nexus 7 and is a download for Galaxy Nexus phones, but there is no phone shipping with that because it just barely popped out from Google. If we take a look at the design and build on these guys, well, you know, HTC, they're made a big deal about their polycarbonate unibody design, and it really is beautiful. This phone is available in a dark gray or in this white, and it has that kind of soft, non-glossy finish, just like the Nokia Lumia does. A little glossy on the sides, probably to avoid having it get too mucky. It's my personal phone. I've been using it for months. It's still just as white as ever. I don't do anything special to keep it clean, so that works. So it's very modern, it's distinctive, it's a good-looking phone. It is polycarbonate, which is a glorified kind of plastic, basically, though, but it's very durable, and that's something to be said for it. The Atrix, Gorilla Glass on the front, a little bit of bevel, and it has that Kevlar back here, which feels really nice and looks really cool. Gives you a little bit more water resistance, a little bit more ruggedness, and the sides here are basically polycarbonate too. Looks a lot like the Razr. It's a good looking phone, also available in either white or dark grayish black. Unibody design as well. The battery is sealed inside. The Xperia Ion, now this guy looks a little bit more minimalist and classy, typical of Sony's higher-end designs. Very clean front face, capacitive buttons over here that are a little bit fiddly. The other guys have easier buttons to use, but good-looking phone, slim, small controls that work well, dedicated camera buttons, since this is, well, a high-end imaging phone. Nice metal back here. Just looks and feels like a nice high-quality piece. Top here comes off to reveal the micro SD and micro SIM card slots. So, good-looking phone. Probably from a material standpoint and cleanliness of design, the Sony Xperia Ion would be the winner. Lastly, we have the Samsung Galaxy S3. It's also made of polycarbonate, but you wouldn't know it because they put such a glossy finish on it. It looks pretty plasticky. You know, I picked on them when I did my full review of this phone. It doesn't look quite as high-end. Shines like a mirror. This is the blue version. There is also a white version, and we'll show you that. And here it is in glossy white, and the front is also white to match. So, while I picked on the way the phone looks a little bit, kind of that cheap, shiny Samsung plasticky look, it has one special feature compared to these other phones. This is the only one that has a removable back, and you can actually access the battery on it. So you just yank that off like so, and there's your micro SD card slot, your micro SIM slot, and your battery. Here you can pop it out and put it back in. You put a spare in on the road. 2100 milliamps, so this has the highest capacity battery of all too. Sony Xperia Ion has 1900 milliamps sealed inside. Motorola Atrix HD has a 1780 milliamp battery sealed inside. HTC One X has an 1800 milliamp battery sealed inside. Typically, I've found that with the Samsung phone, I get about, maybe 40 minutes longer runtime. So that's what you get for those extra milliamps. And that's not so significant as the ability to, well, swap in a battery. So you don't have to carry external little charger bricks with you or run to outlets. If you're the kind of person who's using this on the road for business, you travel a lot, you're away for outlets, certainly you still can't beat having a battery that can be swapped in with this fresh one when you need it. So for appearance and materials, I give the Xperia Ion the top rank, followed by the One X, and then, well, between the Atrix and the Samsung, it really depends on the kind of look phone you want. But for battery, not just for battery life, but for the ability to swap in a spare battery, the Samsung Galaxy S3 is the winner there. Now, in terms of call quality, data speeds, and wireless radios, these are all quad-band GSM. They all have LTE 4G and HSPA Plus as well. And I'm not going to bore you. I'm not going to run Ookla's speed test and all these, so you can watch the little bars go, and you're going to see exactly the same readings on all these guys. These guys had pretty much to the dB, identical reception, and the same download speeds and upload speeds, which on LTE, which are very impressive. In our area, we've been doing like 30 megabit per second down and 17 up lately. So really, that depends on what region you're in. We're fortunate that we have good service here. But you're looking at identical data speeds, identical reception, and call quality on all of these is really excellent. Top call quality. You can't go wrong with any of these phones for conversations. Likewise, they all have the same Android standard web browser, and you can download Adobe Flash. Adobe will cut that off, I believe, on August 15th for people who haven't already downloaded. If you have it in your account, then that's cool. You can keep re-downloading it, but they're not going to update it, and they're not going to issue it for Jelly Bean in the future. Browsing experience and all these is pretty much the same. Honestly, the Ion may have a slower CPU, but really it's not affecting the rendering speeds at all because they're all more than fast enough to handle that. And likewise, Adobe Flash performance is good. I have noticed that Adobe Flash controls are a little bit, you know how they get cranky on the slower phones, a little bit sometimes more touchy on the Xperia Ion, but nothing I'd really complain about, nothing slow or terrible or anything like that. If they're at all, it is still a 1.5 gigahertz dual-core CPU. S3 though it may be versus the 1.5 gigahertz dual-core S4 on the other phones. Now in terms of software, here's where you're going to see a lot of difference. Samsung Galaxy S3 runs TouchWiz. That probably is the heaviest overlay on top of Android, and a lot of what Samsung has done makes it feel a little bit more gingerbread-like Android OS 2.3. Now that's great for people who really don't want to learn too much new and they're coming from a gingerbread phone. Everything's going to work pretty much the same. For example, if you tap the little menu button on it, you're going to get to your settings and all that kind of thing, instead of doing the Android 4.0 pull down from the top to get to settings thing. Samsung overlays the most software in terms of applications too. You know, there's a whole lot of new stuff there. They have their Blingo-based voice command on there. They have Smart Stay, where the camera turns on every so often and looks to see if you're looking at the phone and doesn't turn the screen off. Some of those things work remarkably well. Some of them not so well, a little bit gimmicky, but a lot of apps to play with there. HTC has their Sense UI, and you can see that includes the famous big flip clock there and their customizations of the application drawer into frequent all downloads, little touches like that. But overall, it carries through the spirit of ICS. If you pull down there, you can see I can get to all my settings. They've skinned over it. They've made it maybe a little bit prettier, that kind of thing. So you've got some skinning on top of there. That's called mid-weight scanning. Now Motorola, they went really lightweight. Other than their usual square icons here, this is ICS 4.04. It's very clean and very true to the ICS interface. Very basic also. You just pull down there, you get your notifications, you get the standard looking ice cream sandwich kind of settings. You look at your application drawer. This is straightforward, and you've got your link to your widgets over here into the Google Play Store. So for those of you who like a really clean Android experience, well, the Motorola would be it. The only thing that they've done that's really different was that they've added their smart actions, which are pretty handy based on your location or time of day. The phone can do certain things like turn down how often it's checking email, change volume settings, that kind of stuff. And the home screen is interesting. You start with this one home screen over here, and there are no more unless you want to add them. If you swipe to the side and you haven't added any, it says, do you want to just put another plain home screen there, or do you want a template based on icons or widgets or something like that? So it's kind of interesting versus some of the phones that give you like 7 home screens, and you're forever swiping back and forth and trying to figure out where some icon went to. If you don't need that many, you don't have to have that many. So that's one of their customizations. And this guy here is still running Gingerbread, but again, not too much of an overlay over here. We've got our little icon launcher over here. We have your fairly standard made translucent, which is actually pretty application launcher. And Sony has really not done too much to change it, which is fine. I like it. It's clean, it's lightweight. It probably won't be as much work for them to upgrade it. But again, you got Gingerbread here until the ICS update comes out. And for those of you who are just thinking, well, that's just too old for me, well, there it is. When it comes to controls here, we've got capacitive buttons. It's very hard to see on the Samsung unless they light up, which can drive you a little crazy until you know where they are. Physical home button that presses and clicks. It's a little close to the bottom edge, so I find I tend to accidentally flip the phone out of my hand sometimes when I'm pressing and squeezing on it, you know. Here we have capacitive buttons. Now, Motorola is the only one that goes with the straight ice cream sandwich kind of design, where we have the software controls at the bottom. So we don't need the capacitive buttons anymore, and there are no capacitive buttons. And HTC keeps those capacitive buttons. So I won't declare an absolute winner here. Obviously, Sony is at a disadvantage because they still have Gingerbread on the phone right now. Might change my mind when they come out with ICS, but for right now, that's a little bit of a hurt there. And beyond that, it depends on what you like. Some folks really like a lot of customization from the manufacturer, little value-added, convenient things, the applications that can be more powerful and interesting than the standard stuff, and others you just despise that and want something clean. I will say, if you like a lot of custom applications, some innovative stuff, Samsung Galaxy S3. If you like a lot of low-key, thoughtful apps and customizations that just make it easier to use the phone, more expedient, HTC One X with its moderate level of customization. And if you're all about just want to get as clean an Android as you can, well, it's Motorola Atrix HD for you. Now, as we roll into cameras, you're not going to suffer with most of these phones here. 8 megapixel camera on the HTC One X, backside illuminated sensor, dedicated imaging chip. Likewise, the same is true for the Samsung. They both take really nice pictures. HTC has a little bit better light balance outdoors for bright shots. It's always been a little bit of a sore point for Samsung, but Samsung answers with really good low light photography. Either way, you got 1080p video recording. You can snap photos simultaneously while shooting video. Good stuff. The Motorola Atrix HD, just an average camera, maybe 8 megapixel, and yes, it can shoot 1080p video at 30 frames per second, but it's not as sharp. You can see a little bit more noise and a little excess image processing going on. Video is not too bad though, the 1080p video on it, other than it has a little problem again with that light to dark if you're outside adjustment, that kind of thing, but it's just not up to the other cameras here. Sony Xperia Ion 12 megapixel camera, and you know Sony and their Exmor sensors, and they make a lot of cameras. They just do some really good stuff with photography. It is the best camera. It isn't just about megapixels. You can have a lot of megapixels, but it's going to give you a crappy image. This one has a lot of megapixels, takes really nice photos, point and shoot quality for sure photos, and nice 1080p video as well. It's, yeah, my top pick definitely. And with this display here, I swear, it's just, the photos look even better when you look at them on the phone than they will anywhere else, because it's just such a wonderful combination between that camera and that display. So that's our comparison smackdown between the HTC One X, the Motorola Atrix HD, the Sony Xperia Ion, and the Samsung Galaxy S3, all available on AT&T now. Again, $199 for the One X and the Samsung Galaxy S3, $99 for the Atrix HD and the Xperia Ion. Honestly, no matter which phone you go with, you're getting a really nice product. So this is pretty hard. I always say, don't worry about skimping on the phone price if you can all afford it, because you've got to live with this thing for 2 years, assuming that you stick with your contract and you wait for your renewal period to be up. And the monthly payments that you're making for your service are way higher than what $99 versus $199 equals over 24 months. But still, in this case, you know, the Atrix HD has an awful lot going for it. It has pretty much an answer for everything that the more expensive phones have, other than the not-so-great camera. Now, if you're into taking photos, that makes a world of difference to you, but some of you aren't. And then it becomes an issue of which design do you like the best? Do you like that razor kind of looking thing? Do you like the ruggedness of the Kevlar back and the Gorilla Glass on the front? And with the Xperia Ion, I know it runs gingerbread at 2.3. It has an S3 CPU, so, you know, those are a little bit let down. If you're an enthusiast, you're not going to be too thrilled about that. If you're more normal Joe average in the store, Jane average looking at the phone, though, you're going to say, man, what a gorgeous design, a metal back, such a nice screen, and look at that camera. So it has a lot of selling points, too. And if you're really into imaging and you like a stylish metal phone, well, there's something to be said for the Sony Xperia Ion, too. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Don't forget to watch our video reviews of each of these phones, and we have a Smackdown that does more detail just between the HTC One X and the Samsung Galaxy S3 if you're interested in that as well, and we have written reviews of all these phones. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel.